There is a video. Hundreds of people remember watching it. They describe the same camera position, the same sounds, the same moment where the footage cuts off. They remember the websites they found it on, and they name the same ones. They remember closing the tab, sitting back, not sleeping that night. Strangers, different countries, different ages, people who have never spoken to each other, describing the same thing. There is one problem. Every person who has gone looking for it, seriously looking, for years, has found nothing. No copy, no mirror, no cached page, no archived file, nothing. The FBI has been asked about this video. A museum in New York has been asked about this video. And after 2 decades of searching, the most honest conclusion anyone can reach is this. The video that hundreds of people remember watching may never have existed. To talk about this video, we have to name the morning it comes from, and we are going to do that carefully, because this story involves real people, real deaths, and families who are still here. The video is said to come from September 11th, 2001. In the mid-2000s, the internet was a different place. Footage that television would never broadcast ended up on shock sites, pages with no rules, no filters, and no memory. Things appeared. Things vanished. Nobody kept records. And somewhere in that world, people say, was a clip filmed at street level. Close. Closer than any footage that has ever been made public from that morning. The people who claim they saw it say you could hear the voice of the man holding the camera. Some of them remember one sentence from the audio. The same sentence. We're going to have to blur that out. That detail appears again and again from people with no connection to each other. Years later, the clip got a name. A crude one. Born from the way shock sites talked back then. The internet calls it LOL Superman. And here is where this stops being a story about a video and becomes a story about evidence. Because when researchers actually lined the testimonies up, they didn't match. Some remember it on one website, some on another. Some remember 30 seconds, some remember 2 minutes. Some remember sounds that others swear were never there. The memories agree just enough to be compelling, and disagree just enough to fall apart under questioning. So the search went formal. Researchers contacted news agencies that filmed that morning, documentary makers, internet archivists who specialize in this exact era, even former moderators of the shock sites themselves, the people who would have approved the upload. None of them had ever seen it. Then someone asked the FBI. The Bureau holds one of the largest collections of September 11th footage ever assembled, most of it never released. And when it was asked whether anything in that archive matches the description of this clip, the answer that came back was not a no. It was, material matching that description may exist. May. In October 2022, a searcher wrote to the 9/11 Memorial and Museum in New York and asked the same question. The museum did not say the footage doesn't exist. The museum said it does not have the right to share or license it. Listen to that sentence again. It confirms nothing. It denies nothing. And to people who had spent years searching, it sounded like a locked door with something behind it. But before you decide this video is real, you need to hear about the time the internet thought it found it. Around 2011, a 5-second clip surfaced, tagged as exactly this footage. Grainy, street level, horrifying. For a moment the search was over. Then someone checked the details. The clip wasn't from New York. It wasn't from 2001. It was footage from a building fire in Rio de Janeiro. In 1986, 15 years earlier, a different continent, and people had watched it and remembered September 11th. That is the moment this mystery turns inside out, because it proves something uncomfortable. When people want a memory to have a source, almost anything can become that source. Human memory is not a recording. It's a reconstruction. Every time you remember something, your brain rebuilds it, from fragments, from feelings, from things you read, from things other people said they saw. And a memory rebuilt with borrowed parts feels exactly as real as one built from experience. To your brain, there is no difference. Now add the internet. One vivid description, posted at 2 a.m., read by 10,000 people who lived through the same terrible morning, and know that cameras were everywhere. Some of them will go looking, and some of them will start to remember. There is one more piece. Unseen footage from that morning is still surfacing, even now. In 2025, a New York library unveiled 500 hours of first-person tapes the public had never seen. Volunteers are still recovering recordings that sat in closets for more than 20 years. The archive of that day has never stopped growing, and no one alive has seen all of it. So those are your two explanations, and both of them fit every fact you've just heard. Either the video is real, and it sits in an archive no one is allowed to open, or hundreds of people share a detailed, matching memory of something that was never filmed. Hold that question, because to understand which answer is more likely, you need to see what happens when this kind of mystery is real. In 2021, a user named Carl92 uploaded 17 seconds of audio to a song identification forum. A fragment of a track that sounded like it fell out of 1986. Synths. A voice. A hook you couldn't place, but somehow already knew. Nobody could identify it. Not the forum, not the databases, not the music historians who joined the hunt as it spread. The internet named it after the words people thought they heard in the chorus. Everyone knows that. Millions of plays, hundreds of covers, entire communities formed around 17 seconds of sound. And then Carl92, the only person on Earth who had the file, vanished. He never came back, never answered, never explained where the clip came from. And in the silence he left behind, a theory started growing. The exact theory this whole video is about. People began to whisper that Carl92 had faked it, that he'd built the most believable fake song in internet history, planted it, and walked away to watch the world dig for something that wasn't there. A real mystery, accused of being fake. Remember that. It's about to matter. Because in April 2024, after 3 years, the case cracked. In the least dignified way possible. Someone was watching a 1986 adult film called Angels of Passion. And in the background of a scene, playing on the soundtrack, there it was. The song was called Ulterior Motives, written by two brothers who scored low-budget films in the 80s. Real people. Real names. A real master tape. The mystery had an answer because the song had a source. Something somewhere was always real, and it wasn't the only one. For 17 years, the lost media community chased a song a German teenager taped off the radio in the mid-1980s. His sister uploaded it in 2007, assuming someone would name it in a week. No one could. For nearly 2 decades, it was simply called the most mysterious song on the internet. It became the community's white whale, analyzed down to the drum machine model, hunted across radio archives, broadcast logs, record fairs. Then in 2024, one researcher took a different road. Instead of hunting the song, he hunted the stage. digging through old listings of bands that played small festivals in northern Germany. He found a name, wrote to a former member, asked if he kept any old recordings. The man checked. One of his tapes was labeled "Subways of Your Mind." It was the song. The band was called Fex, and for 17 years, while the internet turned their music into a legend, they had no idea. They weren't hiding. They weren't a mystery. They were ordinary men who recorded a track, moved on with their lives, and never knew the world was looking for them. And that is the pattern. Write it down, because it's the key to everything that follows. Real things leave trails. A master tape, a film reel, a band member with a box in his attic. The trail can go quiet for 17 years, but it exists because the thing exists. So when something is searched for 2 decades by the best digital archaeologists on the planet, and the trail doesn't go cold, it goes nowhere, there are only 2 possibilities left. Either the search isn't finished, or there was never anything to find. Which brings us to the graveyard. There is a category on the Lost Media Wiki that most visitors never click. It's called Non-Existence Confirmed. It is a graveyard of mysteries that were investigated seriously, sometimes for years, by people who believed in them, and were proven, in the end, to have never existed at all. Hoaxes, misrememberings, stories that wore the costume of evidence. These are the files that should worry you. Here are 3. If you grew up in the 90s, you might remember a family movie where the comedian Sinbad played a genie, granting wishes to 2 kids. You might remember the VHS box, Sinbad with his arms crossed, smirking purple cover. Millions of people remember this movie. They remember renting it. They remember scenes. They remember the ending. It does not exist. There is no studio record, no copyright filing, no print, no poster, no script. In 2009, someone asked the internet about it, and instead of an answer, found thousands of people who shared the memory and a title. Shazaam. Sinbad himself, the man whose career this supposedly was, has spent years telling the world he never made it. People argue with him. They tell the actor he is wrong about his own life. The likely truth is almost insulting. In 1996, there was a genie movie, Shazaam, starring Shaquille O'Neal, and the trailer for it was placed on the VHS tapes of an actual Sinbad movie from the same year. Millions of kids watched a Sinbad film, saw a genie trailer in the same sitting, and their brains, decades later, quietly merged the 2. But here's the part that makes this case dangerous instead of funny. In 2017, a comedy website built the fake. As a joke, they produced a fake rediscovered scene, Sinbad in costume as the genie. Clearly a sketch, clearly labeled. And people took screenshots of it, cropped out the context, and posted them as proof. A manufactured clip of a movie that never existed became evidence that it did. The joke became the proof. Remember that mechanism. You're going to see it again. Industrialized, August 2009. A user on 4chan's paranormal board describes a video so disturbing that watching it causes nightmares, breakdowns. Worse. He doesn't have the file. He has screenshots. He calls it the Grifter. The board loses its mind. Threads multiply. Everyone wants the link nobody has. Within days, people claim they've seen it. Within weeks, copies start appearing online. Dark hallways, distorted audio, a message at the end written in Esperanto. Every single one was fake. The screenshots in the original post were traced to a surreal Czech art film about a couple raising a tree root as a child. The found videos were stitched from the same movie. And eventually, The original poster confessed. He'd invented the whole thing. He even borrowed the name from a monster in a 1986 TV horror episode he saw as a kid. Case closed. No, because here is what did not happen. The videos didn't disappear. People kept uploading real versions years after the confession. The fakes outlived the truth. Today, copies exist of a cursed tape that was never lost because it was never real. The rumor didn't just spread. The rumor manufactured its own evidence. You have seen this face. White skin, carved smile, no eyelids. Since 2008, it has been the face of internet horror, attached to a story read by millions. For years, a darker story traveled with it. That the face was photoshopped from a real photo of a real girl, a teenager bullied on the same forums, who, the story said, took her own life. The image, people whispered, was a tombstone. Internet detectives spent over a decade on this, and what they found dismantles the legend twice over. First, the photo at the center of that rumor belongs to a real woman who is alive. The suicide story was fiction, which means for years, a living person had her face attached to a death she never died, and was harassed over a tragedy that never happened. The fake backstory had real victims. Second, the trail of the actual image runs the other way entirely, backwards, to Japanese websites in 2005, years before the famous story existed. There's an earlier, less edited version posted by a user nobody has ever traced. Researchers even concluded the bulging eyes were probably taken from a photo of a Mr. Potato Head toy. But the original photograph, the real, unedited face underneath 2 decades of internet horror, has never been found. The Lost Media Wiki lists it as lost media. Think about what that means. The most famous, scary image on the internet is itself a missing file. We built a global legend on top of a photo, and we cannot find the photo. A movie remembered by millions that was never filmed. A cursed tape that faked its own existence. A face with no source. Every entry in that graveyard started the same way. Someone wrote the first post. One person, before the threads, before the community, before the memories, describing something specific enough to search for and suggestive enough to remember. Who are they? Pranksters? The confused? Storytellers who didn't expect to be believed? For 20 years, it didn't matter much. Faking a mystery took effort, and the fakes were findable. A Czech film here, a Shack trailer there. The truth was slower than the lie, but it could still catch it. Then the tools changed. In the first week of 2026, media researchers in the United States said something that would have sounded insane in 2006. They described the moment we live in as a collapse of trust, a point where what's fake often looks real, and what's real often looks fake. Not a warning about the future. A description of now. In March 2026, during an actual war, fake AI-generated combat videos pulled millions of views before anyone could check them. So many that a major platform started demonetizing any account posting undisclosed AI war footage. Realistic clips of events that never happened, manufactured faster than they could be debunked. That same month, researchers exposed a network of more than 200 websites publishing AI-written articles, with hidden instructions buried in their content, instructions invisible to readers, instructions to inject fear, to manufacture urgency, to dress up nothing as breaking news. 200 sites, millions of readers. An emotion factory running for 2 years before anyone noticed. Now bring that home to our graveyard. In 2009, Faking the Grifter took a troll with screenshots from an obscure film, and the fake was caught because the source could be traced. In 2026, the same hoax takes one sentence typed into a prompt box. Aged footage, period-accurate grain, forum posts that look 15 years old, archive captures that never happened, evidence without a source. Because there is no film to trace it back to. The thing that always saved the searchers, everything real leaves a trail, has a new problem. Now the fakes don't leave one either. And if you want to know how real this already is, go back to the video from the start of this story. The community searching for LOL Superman runs a research archive. Rules, evidence standards, a plea not to contact victims' families. And on that site, today, there is a whole section dedicated to documenting AI fakes, counterfeit versions of a video they cannot prove was ever real. Sit with that. People are now manufacturing fake copies of something that may itself be a false memory. Fakes of a maybe, evidence of a ghost. For 20 years, the lost media community has been the internet's quality control, the people who actually check. They solved the song. They traced the cursed tape. They cleared an innocent woman's name. But their entire method rests on one assumption, that searching long enough separates the real from the invented. What happens to that method in a world where the invented comes pre-aged, pre-sourced, and pre-witnessed? What happens when the trail doesn't go cold? Because the trail was built to loop. Let's go back to where we started. Hundreds of people, different countries, different ages, no connection to each other. A matching sentence of audio. 2 decades of searching. A government archive that says, maybe. A museum that says, we can't share it. And not one single frame. If the video is real, then somewhere, in a drawer no one is allowed to open, sits the most carefully hidden file of the internet age, and every system we built to preserve the truth has a room we can't enter. If the video is not real, then memory itself is the unreliable narrator. Then hundreds of strangers built the same vivid recollection out of grief, rumor, and a description read at 2 a.m., and carried it for 20 years as their own. One answer breaks your trust in institutions. The other breaks your trust in yourself. There is no third option. Maybe the scariest lost media isn't the thing we can't find. It's the thing we built because we needed it to exist. Because the feeling of having seen the proof is easier to live with than the feeling that some things end without a record. And if you're sitting there right now, remembering something you watched once, something nobody else can find, something you could swear was real, after everything you've just seen, how sure are you? Leave one number in the comments, 1, 2, or 3. And if you want the next file opened, subscribe and turn notifications on. Because the next mystery on this channel is one the internet still argues about every single day.